October 8, 2003. The Atlantic Ocean, 3 or 4 miles off the coast of Cape May, New Jersey. An ordinary day of fishing for local fishermen suddenly turned into the beginning of one of the most shocking investigations in the history of the state. At first, they mistook it for debris. The dark object floating on the surface of the water was of no particular interest. However, as they got closer, the fishermen realized with horror that it was a human body. It was a scene you will never forget, one of the fishermen later recalled. The body was badly decomposed, but unmistakably human. We immediately contacted the Coast Guard. Investigator James Thistle of the New Jersey State Police, NJSP, arrived on the scene with a team of forensic scientists. What they found made even seasoned detectives shudder. A stone crab was gnawing on the inside of my thigh, Thistle said. This indicated that the body had been on the ocean floor for some time. Stone crabs are bottom-dwelling scavengers, but it wasn't the condition of the body that was most disturbing. A heavy metal chain was wrapped around the victim's ankles. Her hands and feet were bound with duct tape. This was clearly not an accident or suicide. The investigators were looking at a brutal murder victim. Because of the long period of submersion, the body was in poor condition. The usual fingerprint identification methods were not applicable. Detective Thistle got creative. I used saline and a hypodermic needle, he explained. I tied a string around the last joint of the finger and injected the saline solution under the pad. This allowed the skin to be pulled back and a print to be identified. The technique worked. The missing persons database was used to identify the deceased. She was 16-year-old Kimberly Holton of Dover, Delaware. She had been missing since September 30th, 8 days before her body was found. When we found out the victim was only 16, it shocked the entire team, Detective Steve Brown said. Our main concern now was finding someone who could commit such a heinous crime against a child. To solve the murder, investigators had to delve into Kimberly Holton's past. It turned out that the girl had a difficult life. Destiny Andrews, Kimberly's best friend, said, Kim was the sweetest person you'd ever meet, but behind her cheerful personality, there was a difficult past. Kimberly grew up in the foster care system. Her first adoptive mother, Sherry Welsh of Williamstown, New Jersey, said of the girl's early childhood, she had little food and no toys. That's when Child Protective Services had to step in. At the time of her disappearance, Kimberly was living with the Machete family in Dover. She had an adopted sister, Heather. Lorraine Machete, the adoptive mother, told police that Kimberly would occasionally run away from home for a couple of days at a time. There were a lot of problems in this house before Kimberly went missing, Detective Brown said. An autopsy of Kimberly Holton's body revealed no obvious signs of trauma that could explain her death. However, the medical examiner did find severe blunt force trauma to the head. The pattern of injuries was consistent with a fall from a significant height, Detective Thistle said. That led us to believe that the body may have been dropped from an airplane. A key piece of evidence was the metal chain around the victim's ankles. Thistle noticed that each link was stamped with a number. This allowed the chain to be traced to a specific Lowe's home improvement store near Kimberly's home. A check of Lowe's records yielded an unexpected result. The manager was able to find in the computer system that the exact same length of chain of the same brand had been purchased at the store, Detective Brown said, along with zip ties and cinder blocks. The most astonishing thing was that the purchase had been made the day after Kimberly went missing. The police quickly obtained surveillance video. It showed two men making the purchase. Although the quality of the footage was poor and the payment was made in cash, it was their first serious lead. Investigators turned to the media to see footage of the unknown buyers. We were inundated with calls, Detective Porter recalled. Several tipsters pointed to a man named Robert Brothers. Robert Brothers called the police hotline himself. He admitted to being in the store but denied involvement in the crime. He said he was accompanying his friend Jacob Jones, who was allegedly buying the items for weightlifting. I didn't find it odd, Brothers testified during questioning. There was no talk of using the items for anything criminal. The police found no reason to disbelieve Brothers. When asked why Jones might have harmed Kimberly, Brothers mentioned the name Heather, the victim's adopted sister and Jacob Jones' girlfriend. There was a lot of tension between Heather and Kim, confirmed Destiny Andrews, a friend of Kimberly. Kim was very beautiful. Heather might have been jealous of her looks. Heather's questioning yielded no significant results. The sobbing teen admitted to normal sibling squabbles, but categorically denied involvement in Kimberly's disappearance. I swear to God, I don't know what happened to Kim, Heather screamed at investigators. I don't know if Jacob had anything to do with it. I don't know anything about it. I'm completely innocent. Investigators focused on 20-year-old Jacob Jones. At first glance, he seemed an unlikely suspect. A sophomore at the University of Delaware, he had straight A's and no criminal record. Jones was in an aviation program the Dover Post's Jeff Brown reported. He was a licensed pilot and instructor at Dover Air Force Base. He had access to planes, which he regularly rented. When questioned, Jones admitted buying the chains, padlocks, and cinder blocks, but insisted on the weightlifting theory. He couldn't say where the items were now, however. Jones soon asked for an attorney and stopped cooperating with investigators. We talked to his supervisor, Detective Brown continued. He said Jacob had been missing work or showing up late in recent weeks. He was very agitated and angry. The key moment came when investigators checked airbase records. It turned out that on September 30th, 2003, at 11:45 p.m. the night Kimberly disappeared, Jones had rented a Cessna for 2 hours. On October 23, 2003, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Jacob Jones' father called police to report that his son had committed suicide by shooting himself in his bedroom. But before he died, Jones made a shocking confession to his parents. He said that he and a 23-year-old friend, Michael Kaiser, had killed Kimberly Holton. Jones told his father that Holton was causing problems in the family, especially with his girlfriend, Heather, Detective Brown explained. He was supposedly forced to fix things. Kaiser was helping him do it. Police immediately detained Michael Kaiser for questioning. Under pressure from the evidence, Kaiser confessed, revealing horrific details about the crime. According to Kaiser, Jones asked him to pick up Kimberly on the evening of September 29th. They took her to a budget inn, ostensibly to talk to Jones about his problems with Heather. Jake told me he wanted to kill her and wanted me to help him get rid of her body, Kaiser told investigators. I told him he was crazy, that I didn't want any part of it, but he threatened to kill me if I didn't help him. Kaiser described how they attacked Kimberly as she came out of the bathroom. I held her legs while Jake wrapped the phone cord around her neck and suffocated her with a pillow, he admitted. She stopped moving, stopped kicking. Jake checked for a pulse. She was dead. The murder took place around 2 a.m. on September 30th. 2003. After the murder, Jones and Kaiser placed Kimberly's body in the trunk of a car. It remained there for several hours while the criminals prepared for the next stage of their plan. Later that night, Jones rented a Cessna jet from an Air Force base in Cheswold, Delaware. Kaiser admitted to helping load the body, which was wrapped in chains and weighted with cinder blocks, into the plane. Jones took the plane into the air and headed toward the Atlantic Ocean. Over the waters off the coast of New Jersey, he dropped Kimberly's body from a high altitude. The plane was so high that when Kimberly's body hit the water, it was like hitting concrete at 130 miles an hour, said investigator Captain Lee. The cinder blocks crumbled on impact. Jones didn't account for the force of the elements, which is why the body floated to the surface. The investigation established that the main motive for the murder was the strained relationship between Kimberly and her adopted sister Heather, Jones' girlfriend. Jones seemed obsessed with protecting Heather and solving the problem with Kimberly, the prosecutor commented in the case. This is a horrific example of how a toxic relationship and uncontrolled. On October 24, 2003, police announced the arrest of Michael Kaiser. He was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. The murder of Kimberly Holton has shocked the community and raised questions about the foster care system and the protection of vulnerable youth. Kimberly's foster sister, Heather, has not been charged. Investigators have found no evidence that she was directly involved in the crime. However, she remains under intense public scrutiny. The Machette family, who housed Kimberly, expressed deep regret. We never thought Jacob would do something like this, they said in an interview. We will live with this pain for the rest of our lives. On January 6, 2004, Kaiser was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy and sentenced to life in prison.